The former dictator of Chile, General Pinochet, has been arrested in a London hospital. Spain wants him to answer for the murder of their citizens when he was in power. NATO spy planes fly over Kosovo, where the Serbs are accused of more shelling. And England's young golfing hope is mauled by the tiger. Good evening. The former dictator of Chile, General Augusto Pinochet, has been arrested by police in London. The 82-year-old general had been having medical treatment here. He's being held at the request of the authorities in Spain, who accuse him of the murder of Spanish citizens when he was in power. Chile has made a formal protest against the arrest, saying General Pinochet is entitled to diplomatic immunity.
Demonstrators continue to protest well into the evening outside the London clinic, where the aging former dictator is still being held. General Pinochet was arrested late last night by police who were acting on an extradition warrant issued by the Spanish authorities. It's believed he now has an armed guard. His visit has been strongly criticized by human rights groups, especially as France had refused to give him a visa. Earlier today, they welcomed his arrest.
There are here relatives, of the disappeared who are still looking for their relatives, for their loved ones, daughters, sons, husbands, And we want for him to say what happened to them, And we want truth and we want justice. That's all we want.
General Augusto Pinochet was perhaps the most notorious and reviled of Latin American military dictators. He led a military coup in 1973 against the democratically elected government. For the next 17 years, with the support of the United States, he ruthlessly suppressed all left-wing movements and dissent. His authoritarian rule brutalized Chilean society. Over 3,000 people were executed by his regime and 1,200 are still missing. To this day, the families of the disappeared are still trying to find out what became of their loved ones. It's believed that hundreds of his victims were Spanish citizens, which is why he's wanted for questioning there. But General Pinochet enjoys the protection of the law in Chile. As part of the deal under which he stepped down as president in 1990, he has immunity from prosecution. And earlier this year, he resigned as the head of the military, but in return, he was made a senator for life. Furthermore, he entered Britain on a diplomatic passport. As a result, Chile has now said his arrest is unacceptable.
The Chilean government has presented a formal protest note to the British government for what is considered the violation of diplomatic immunity granted to Senator Pinochet, demanding the adoption of all necessary measures to overcome the situation as soon as possible.
But the British government says that the decision to arrest General Pinochet was not a political one, and Downing Street says that the matter is in the hands of police and magistrates. Raghi Omar, BBC News, Central London.
NATO spy planes have begun flying over Kosovo to check that Serb forces are leaving the province. And the first international observers have also arrived in the region to monitor the withdrawal. But both the Kosovo Liberation Army and Serb police have accused each other of carrying out fresh attacks. Most people in Kosovo are ethnic Albanians who want more control over their own affairs.
The need for observers on the ground here is becoming urgent. Hassan Pacharizi showed me the damage to his home caused by a mortar round which landed in his garden. He says it was fired last night along with many others which hit buildings nearby. They were hiding elsewhere when a hole was smashed in the bedroom wall, scattering shrapnel and debris onto the bed. The roof is damaged in several places. There's no doubt it has been hit, but there is a question about when. There's no independent proof that this did happen last night because there are no observers here when it's dark. But the villagers insist that tonight, when darkness falls, so too will mortars and bullets. Until villages like this are patrolled by observers, the claims by Albanians and counterclaims by Serbs will be impossible to judge. An advance party of observers has arrived in Belgrade, making preparations for the 2,000 who will follow. As they arrived, American spy planes began flying over the region. But there's still no date for the arrival of the main group of observers. The villagers of Dragabilia are unimpressed by the actions of the outside world and angered at the 10 extra days the Serbs have been given to prove they've withdrawn enough police.
If you give Milosevic more time, he will continue to bomb. You can see what he's done to our houses.
The other race against time continues today too. More convoys of aid, this time in the familiar white livery of the United Nations. The day has been sunny, but overnight and early morning the region was covered in freezing fog. There are many here who can take little more. Paul Welsh, BBC News, Kosovo.
The oil giant BP is investigating reports of links between the company and soldiers in Colombia who've been accused of human rights abuses. A security advisor to BP, Roger Brown, has been suspended. There have been claims he discussed supplying weapons to troops protecting an oil pipeline in the country. BP says he showed poor judgment.
With parts of Colombia in a state of civil war, companies like BP rely on the military for protection. BP has operated in the country since 1989 and is part owner of a corporation that runs a 500-mile-long oil pipeline. The Colombian army is trying to safeguard the pipeline against left-wing guerrillas. It's now alleged that a security advisor to BP discussed the idea of illegally supplying the Colombian army with military equipment to protect it. BP say they've now moved the man, but deny providing any arms.
He started investigating options of supplying arms to the military, and we deemed them to be inappropriate and poor judgment, so we asked him to leave the operations. He'd done nothing wrong, but the options he was looking into transgressed our boundaries of what was proper.
Human rights groups monitoring oil companies in Colombia say they're concerned any arms could have ended up in the hands of army units already implicated in the massacre of civilians.
The dismissal of the security chief shows that BP is clearly trying to distance itself from the activities of its contracted company in order to protect its own human rights record.
BP promises that its inquiry into the allegations of arms dealing will be thorough, but it also says the same allegations play into the hands of Colombian guerrillas, making the job of oil production even more dangerous. Duncan Kennedy, BBC News, at BP headquarters in the City of London.
The Northern Ireland First Minister David Trimble has said he hopes this year's Nobel Peace Prize award will encourage Republicans to move quickly towards giving up their weapons. Mr. Trimble was speaking on his return from the United States, where he first heard that he'll be sharing the prize with John Hume of the SDLP.
Modestly triumphant, the Nobel laureate returned home this morning from an economic mission to the United States. It was good to be back, he said. Congratulations, first from his wife Daphne and their youngest daughter Sarah, then from his party workers and supporters. It was they, the First Minister acknowledged, who, with the nationalist SDLP, had done so much to bring the Peace Prize to Northern Ireland. But with no sign of any paramilitary weapons being handed over, there was still work to do.
I hope that this award will encourage the Republican movement to take the steps that are necessary to give public confidence and assurance that we are going to see the end of the troubles of the last 3 decades, because the real prize is to produce lasting peace.
The question of arms decommissioning continues to concern Mr. Trimble's critics within his own party, who say the Nobel Prize does not change political realities.
One of those realities is the question of who sits in the government of Northern Ireland, and is it right to have in our government people linked to a terrorist organisation which is fully armed and is refusing to honour its obligations under the agreement and decommission its weapons.
John Hume, who shares the Nobel Prize, is resting in Dublin. Last night he earned a standing ovation from a television studio audience. Applause not only for him, but for the whole of Ireland. Chris West, BBC News, Belfast.
The Lord Chancellor has questioned whether people applying to become magistrates should continue to be asked which political party they support. Lord Irvine told magistrates at their annual general meeting that in future they should reflect the social rather than political balance of the community.
Magistrates' courts try most criminal cases in England and Wales. But before you can become a magistrate, you're asked which political party you generally support. The aim is to make sure that panels of magistrates reflect voting patterns in the areas where they sit. But the Lord Chancellor thinks this policy may be an out-of-date hangover from the days of class-based voting. Instead, he told magistrates that benches should reflect the social balance of an area, taking into account factors such as age, occupation and ethnic origin.
The old political balance test was designed to meet the difficulty that it was thought that benches of magistrates were middle class or upper middle class, dealing out lay justice to the workers. And it may well have served its purposes in the first half of the century. But the question is whether we now should go forward to more sophisticated ways of ensuring that benches are socially balanced.
Magistrates greeted Lord Irvin's announcement with spontaneous applause.
Magistrates are very keen indeed to get a better social mix on the bench. It's something we're all working towards. So it was a very good move, a strong move in the right direction.
Last year, Lord Irvin alarmed magistrates with a call for more Labour supporters on the bench. His new approach assumes that class-based party loyalties are now breaking down. Joshua Rosenberg, BBC News.
The German army has paid tribute to their former Chancellor Helmut Kohl with a torchlit military ceremony. Mr. Kohl, who was voted out of office last month after 16 years in power, was the first German leader to be granted the army's highest ceremonial honour. He seemed visibly moved by the hour-long parade, which was held on the banks of the Rhine near his hometown of Ludwigshafen. And now, with news of the World Match Play golf at Wentworth and more trouble for Glenn Hoddle, here's Helen Rollison.
Thank you, Michael. The Americans Mark O'Meara and Tiger Woods will contest tomorrow's final of the World Match Play Championship at Wentworth. Woods came from behind to defeat Lee Westwood of England 5-4. O'Meara, the current Masters and Open champion, needed only 1.5 rounds to beat Vijay Singh of Fiji.
Lee Westwood carried the hopes of Britain and Europe into the semi-final, played after a night of torrential rain and with a stiff and swirling wind making club selection difficult. From tee to green, his game retained the accuracy that had seen him come confidently through 2 matches since Thursday. But against him, Tiger Woods, still only 22, was just as solid, consistently outdriving the Englishman and showing few of the lapses in accuracy that had seen him nearly beaten by Ian Woosnam yesterday.
Very good shot.
As so often in golf, though, the putter made the difference. Woods' better judgment of the pace of the wet greens first reduced Westwood's morning lead and then saw the American move ahead decisively himself. There was a glimmer of hope for Westwood on the 13th. This approach was good enough to earn him his first hole for a couple of hours. That reduced Woods' lead from 5-4, but on the very next hole the match was all over. Westwood drove too far and Woods put the ball near enough for the putting to be academic. In the other semi-final, last year's champion Vijay Singh had a day he'll hope to forget. His touch and luck deserted him, just as Mark O'Meara, who's already won 2 majors this year, could do little wrong. The Americans' victory margin, secured with this half on the 8th green, was the biggest ever in the event, and the resultant early finish saved him valuable energy resources for tomorrow's final. Steve McCormack, BBC News.
England's football coach Glenn Hoddle has dismissed reports of a dressing room row with team captain Alan Shearer as vicious lies. It's claimed there was an angry confrontation between the two following England's Euro 2000 qualifier with Luxembourg last Wednesday.
Will be the man to take it. Alan Shearer's penalty against Luxembourg should have been the launch pad for a convincing England win. Instead, they faltered in the second half, and Southgate's goal just before the end couldn't disguise another substandard performance. According to newspaper reports, when Glenn Hoddle questioned the players in the dressing room afterwards about why they produced such displays, the captain rounded on him and asked if he'd ever thought it could be down to him. Hoddle has furiously denied the stories.
I am very, very disappointed. They are just vicious lies. They really are. I spoke to Alan this morning. He's of the same opinion. You know, he can't believe it. There's just no truth in this story whatsoever. These people are going out of their way to invent stories to make this job almost an impossible job.
The calls for Glenn Hoddle to be sacked are coming thick and fast in the press, with several papers suggesting he's lost the confidence of the squad. But for the captain and England's most respected player to undermine the coach in the way alleged would be the most damaging blow of all. Hence the strength of the denials from both men. The Sports Minister, Tony Banks, has defended Hoddle, saying people should get behind him rather than do him down. He believes the country has impossible and ridiculous expectations of the England team. But Hoddle will only really feel secure in his job when the results get better. Neil Bennett, BBC News.
In the FA Carling Premiership, the champions Arsenal stuttered today as Southampton came from behind for a 1-1 draw at Highbury. David Howell's got the equaliser for bottom of the table Southampton, their first away goal of the season. A last-minute goal for Curtis Fleming gave Middlesbrough their 2-1 win against Blackburn. Gustavo Poyet got the late winner for Chelsea to keep their unbeaten home record this season. Stephen Glass got the second of 2 goals in 4 minutes for Newcastle. They beat Derby 2-1. The games between West Ham and Aston Villa, Everton and Liverpool, and Manchester United and Wimbledon are on Match of the Day straight after this programme. If you don't want to know the scores, look away now. In the nationwide First Division, Huddersfield stayed top after a 2-0 win over Queen's Park Rangers at the McAlpine Stadium. Birmingham goes second after a 3-1 home win over Crewe.
Birmingham City's challenge for a place in the Premiership is still looking healthy thanks to Peter Unlove. His 40-yard run and finish gave his side the lead. And although Crewe equalised thanks to a splendid strike from Seth Johnson, Martin O'Connor restored Birmingham's lead from the penalty spot before Unlove teed up Paul Furlong for his first goal of the season at St Andrews. But Huddersfield are 2 points clear of Birmingham at the top of the table. Rob Edwards here scoring the leaders first in a 2-0 win over QPR. Lower down the table, Crystal Palace humiliated Norwich. Nicky Rizzo scored the first and best. Matt Jansen justified the interest of several Premiership managers with 2 goals, a combination of strength and skill bringing him his second. And ex-Palace manager Attilio Lombardo showed he still has plenty to offer on the pitch with his side's 5th. Ben Munro-Davis, BBC News.
Rangers stay top of the Scottish Premier League. They had a comfortable 3-0 home win against Hearts. Rod Wallace scored 2 of the 3 goals that all came in the second half. Kilmarnock won at Dundee United. Kevin McGowan's early goal set the tone for a 2-0 result. George O'Boyle scored twice in St Johnstone's 5-0 win over Motherwell. The match between Dunfermline and Celtic is on Sports Scene, so if you don't want to know the score, please look away again now. Rugby Union and Saracens have lost their unbeaten record in the Allied Dunbar Premiership 1 after a surprise 41-28 defeat at Harlequins. Harlequins went into half-time leading 28-7 and after surviving a Saracens fight-back, sealed only their second victory of the season with this try by Darren O'Leary. Bath remained top of the table after beating West Hartlepool. Greg Ruzetsky is out of the CA Trophy in Vienna. He lost his semi-final against Karol Kuchera, 7-6, 6-4. Michael.
And the main news again tonight, the former dictator, General Pinochet, has been arrested in a London hospital. That's it, that's all from the newsroom, from Helen and from me. Good night.
Good evening. After the stormy weather of the past 24 hours, the next 24 are going to be much calmer and quieter. In fact, so quiet tonight, we're going to end up with a widespread frost. Now, the reason for the wet and windy weather was this little area of low pressure. It's now headed across to the other side of the North Sea. You can see how it's taken the wet weather with it on the radar sequence. We're just left with a few flecks of colour now, indicating there are still some showers around. The winds are easing down as well, but during tomorrow they're going to pick up once again across the north of Scotland, bringing some more wintry showers to the hills and mountains there. But for most of us, a quiet night, as I suggested, light winds, clear skies, and of course at this time of year it means we're going to have some frost, and quite a widespread frost, and with all that rain today there's likely to be some ice around by the morning. And a bright morning across central and eastern parts of Britain, rather more in the way of cloud up to the north, those wintry showers, and out to the west, and very gradually through the day I think we're going to see more showers moving in across Northern Ireland into Wales and also the West Country. But for central and eastern parts of England I think it'll probably stay dry for much of the day. And temperatures tomorrow, well, not too dissimilar to today's, but the difference will be the wind strength, so not feeling quite so cold tomorrow afternoon. That's the forecast. Bye-bye.